sir. Keeping in line.
That's like pulling it out.
Hey, Coach, right here.
Yeah.
Matthew Tkachuk was talking about playing at Madison Square Garden after the win the other night and the history and excitement of playing in that building. They haven't had a whole lot of success since the mid-'90s, but does that building carry a mystique for you and your players?
Never had a playoff series with them, and I think that's where most all the real memories and the drive are. Had a good friend play for them and win a Stanley Cup there. So my connection to the New York Rangers from that point was almost through Adam Graves and being a big Ranger fan when he was there. And then we'll create some new memories here in the next 2 weeks.
Coach, as expected, Parkey won his second Selke trophy the other day, but Rhino finished fourth, 12 first place votes. Just obviously they're great individually, but how much have you seen them kind of bring out the best in each other when they played together this year defensively?
Yeah. See, almost, that's not fair. Rarely do you talk about defensive chemistry. You just throw it into a bucket of hard work. Okay, they work hard, so they're good defensive players, but the reads, the sticks, the times, the penalty kill to be aggressive or not be aggressive, they're equally gifted offensively and defensively. That's a very rare thing. I mean, for Sam Reinhart to put up those goals to get into that range, you've got to anticipate some plays, and sometimes you're going to be wrong, but you just don't see him on the video being wrong on a play he anticipated, and it's in your net, right? The other way they describe that is cheating, right? Average players cheat, great players anticipate. It's the same decision, just one's right, one gets it done, right? So there's none of that in either man's game, which is fantastic leadership from a coach's point of view. Like, you don't have to pull teeth to get your players to defend hard because they got to sit on the same bench as those two guys.
I know how you are with talking about goalies, but how special, I mean, what makes Igor Shesterkin so special, and how good of a matchup is it in net between these two guys?
Well, it's a great matchup. That's probably the only part of this I can answer. I don't know what makes I'm not lying to you. I know body language. I know effective goaltenders on teams, maybe when to get a guy out, when not to. I have no idea why you would play goal ever. And then I have no idea what the hell you do, what you're thinking about in there. But there's some spectacular goalies from all over the world, and we'll see a matchup of two great ones. And it's a theme for our playoffs because Vasilevsky was very strong at certain points in that series, and geez, I think Swayman had a 9.55 at some point in our series. So, and you should though, right? You're going to get to 4 teams here in a few hours, and there's going to be some world-class players in all positions, and on our side we'll have 2 brilliant goaltenders.
You guys, after such a hard-fought series against Boston, how useful is 5 days of rest and practice to kind of recuperate?
Really good, because and we got 2 days in front of Game 6, which helped us too. So we've been able to, and then because it does go to Game 6, then the window on the other side's not too long. So we've actually been able to run the same 2-day structure on and off the ice going in. So it's kind of it's routine for us now. The real good jump there today. Almost you got to be careful because they'll run today. You could go an hour hard here today, and they would have gone all of it. So we pulled them back a little bit, but they were good today.
We know that there's no friends on the ice, but there are a lot of relationships in this series from the past. Everybody knows Vincent Trocheck, for instance, Bob and Brad and all that. But how do you, yourself and Wheeler, put that completely aside?
I'm hoping he plays for him. Like, he's a hard-working man, and that injury, to come back from it to be good, he will have done everything he possibly can to get back. I think, especially if you've been here long enough, there's connections all over the place. Other players on the Rangers that I've coached, and when you look around the other teams, they're still in it. There's, my best friend probably in hockey now is coaching one of the other teams. So I don't think it affects you even a bit. You don't even think about it. That puck drops, and that is so far from something that you would consider. You're not laying off hits on a guy because you go as hard as you can, as fast as you can to get off the ice. So I think it's great stories on the way in. I think it makes for a good handshake line. But I don't think it'll affect the series at all.
And we've never asked, what's your relationship with Peter? It's obviously
Well,
complicated over the
we
years.
warmed each other's seats for a while. I think he's got Mike Peck on his staff too. I had him in Toronto. Yeah, so Peter and I went in and out. He came in after me, and Carolina came in after him. Again, had Jake Trouba in Winnipeg. So there's a bunch of players there and staff that you know. And everybody's trying to do the same thing. We'll all respect that, right? Everybody's going to go flat out as hard as they can.
Is there a relationship between you two, or?
No, not more than hello and coaching. Like I'm not a big connector with guys. I'll talk to them sometimes when they come in, and there's some guys that you're close to that you'll text and talk hockey with, but I wouldn't say a close connection. No.
You didn't leave a note in the office for him, and then he leave a
One
note.
one was enough. We each left notes for each other. The story is I left a note on the board the first time I got fired for him because it was a good bunch of guys, and somebody took a picture of it and made it out, and then he did the same for me when he came back. So.
Well, I wanted to ask you about Barkov again. You talked about how he's the perfect guy to be the captain here, and also how this team is more serious this year. How much does that come from him, or is it just part from him, or part of the group?
Well, he got better this summer, so I can't notice that he was more casual last year. There's not an uptake in intensity. Like he's a great focus in what he's doing, but he came back faster, and so he's driving the play different. His game now is considerably different than it was a couple of years ago, but that is also a function. The team's game is completely different. So there's a line that when kids come into the league, they'll always say, I just got to go out and play my game, right? And no, you don't have a game. And then they get to a point where it becomes true. They understand the team game and they have a game, and I just got to go out and play his game. What's great about Barkov is that he didn't settle on a game. He didn't decide at 26, this is who I am as a player, and there's no need to really add anything. I don't need to really improve it. He was a constant. But improvement isn't just these 5 things that I'm good at, I get better at. Like great improvement is these 5 things are my core, I'm good at that, and I can add these 2. Right? And I become a different player, more well-rounded player. So he's more physical, he's just faster. He's always been conscientious defensively. It's the selfies, but he's more dynamic, I think, now offensively as well.
Do you know how much weight he lost?
I don't. That's the other goaltending in the weight room. Clearly, I stay out of that too.
Paul, along those lines, I guess, how satisfying is it for you when you have a player like Anton Lundell and you see the progression, and then in a huge spot, obviously, you put him in the top 6 and he flourishes there to close out a series?
Well, Bill Zito was the guy from day one championing Anton Lundell, and he had really, the year before, it was his first year in the league. He's a young man, and I think he was healthy scratched in the playoffs, so there's still lots to learn. It's just an example, and I just can hear Jim Rutherford being patient with young players, and it's not sometimes in the coach's interest. Like it's not even, it always is in the coach's interest, like especially if you can develop into a special player, but really you'd rather coach veteran guys that are men that you don't have to shape, right? That you don't have to, the amount of video that, and Tuomo Ruutu's been instrumental in that. But Bill was always, this guy can be the guy, and he is just in sections. He was a young man the first half of the season last year, learned, and the playoffs though for him were the key piece. And I think this year it's almost the same thing. The first half of the year he was good. Sam Bennett was out for 13, so he was important. It went well for him, but he didn't have, so this year was a bigger because he didn't have Reinhardt for the year. And now he's kind of, the stage for those guys is how fast can you get him to drive a line, especially at center ice. And he can drive a line now. He didn't need Sam Reinhardt this year to be a real strong player for us. Now his point production was down. That's not even remotely a concern. He's going to score goals. He's going to score enough. It may not be what he gets paid for, his best asset, but he's going to be a good offensive player.
Last 2 questions, Dave Hyde and Jameson Hall.
Nice. JD, nice.
I'm just curious, with Lundell, did you see it, what Zito was pointing out back then? He's a young player, or not young, but he hadn't been successful.
For sure. But I've also seen it in other players too, and it never comes to fruition. But you can see, one of the advantages is that maybe at the time that we kind of come in, he's a very good defensive player. He reads the play in a version of Barkov. He's not out of position. He's not. The question would be the stuff that you can't know as a coach is how truly bad do they want to get better? And there are very mild-mannered men who are incredibly competitive, and they're hyper-wired guys on the ice that are pretty happy where they are, but puck drops and they're a dog on a bone. You don't know that by their personalities. You have to kind of year over year. Okay, you came back a little fitter, a little harder. How much direction does it take for you to do hard things? You got to go get that puck, man. If I got to tell you a guy 15 times, I may not get there, right? But he, credit to him, he's driven himself hard.
That wasn't my question. I don't want to even use my question on that. That
Oh,
was just
I
a
think
follow-up to what Goldie
that's
said.
rules.
My question with Barkov, when you touched on a little his personality, he's not the loudest personality in the room, and yet his game is pretty loud. And did you talk to him a lot? Does he talk to you a lot as a?
No, we talked quite a bit more last year, I think, than we have this year. So I don't have anything to tell him other than how are you, how you doing, how's your body feeling. So we do talk, and he's the captain of the team. But what I'd like to think, and I believe that we all have a perception of what great leadership looks like. It's almost a caricature. It would be an infallible person that's always right, take charge kind of guy up front, grab the room, lots of words. But that is just not real. It's not. I mean, for any one of these guys to be a leader, by far the most important is they allow their own personality to be what drives them. You can't change how you're wired. So he's figured out over the last 2 years how to beat Barkov, not feel necessarily the pressure to reach out to a different style of leadership, but become very good at his own. So he's a gamer, and he comes out and he performs. And what he's done this year is he's sensed what our team needed in games, and that's kind of that vision of a leader. What's wrong? What do we need? How do I make this better? And not just I go out and play my game. I go out and play the game that I'm capable, but I got to play the game the team needs me to play. And I find him in that for sure, right? He's a leader. At Game 6 that he played was incredibly impressive. Even more so when I went back and watched it on video. Like it was really well done.